Thank you very much, Ma, for that nice introduction. Yes, it was a little bit last minute, but I'm actually quite excited to be here and glad for the invitation. AI has emerged in the last several years as a new and exciting way to diagnose, treat, and monitor all health care patients in addition to mental health patients. And it really shows that it could improve patient outcomes. So it's quite exciting. And it'll be great to hear from our experts on the panel on how diversity can accelerate development and adoption of AI within health and mental health applications. So welcome everybody. I think maybe what we can do is just go around the virtual table here and everyone can give a short bio of themselves. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just go around the order in my window here. So Navisha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi. So everyone's heard from me already, but I'm a cognitive scientist. Just completed my PhD at McGill University in Department of Psychiatry, and so my area of research has been in mental health predictors of risky driving, and yeah, that's my research background.
Great, thanks so much. And Sai.
Hey everyone, you just heard from me. Sai. I'm a lead AI scientist at Benevolent AI in drug discovery, and also have a background in AI for mental health.
Great. And Lauren, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Erdman. I'm at University of Toronto with Sick Kids. I'm wrapping up my PhD there. So I'm focused in pediatrics and applying AI to different health problems, including mental health. And I'm starting at Cincinnati Children's Hospital in January as faculty.
Nice. Congratulations. And last but definitely not least, Irene, please. Oh, muted.
You're muted.
There we go. I think it came on.
Yes, thank you, and sorry for the tech glitch. Hello again, everyone. My name is Irene Siradaki. I'm the Research Partnerships Director for Borealis AI, which is the AI lab for the Royal Bank of Canada. Very excited to be here today. Thank you, Mark, for the invitation, and thank you, April, for moderating this discussion that touches on such important matter.
No problem. My pleasure. So thanks everybody for those introductions. So what I thought is, so we have a couple of questions, and I'll start with a question that maybe everyone can start by answering. Why do you think it is important, especially for health or mental health applications, to have a diverse team that develops the solutions? So does anybody want to take a stab at it first? Lauren, you were nodding, so I'm going to start with you if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Happy to. So I think at least for myself, we've seen diversity in many aspects be very important for our teams researching these topics. I actually started out in genetics and genomics research, and it was a really new angle to approach a lot of these problems. We discovered a lot of really important differing underlying factors among different groups when we kind of took a stab, I guess, at these problems. So understanding different mental health, but other diseases actually from a genetic and genomic perspective. And if anyone doesn't focus in that area, actually, including different, that like thinking about then diversity of your population when approaching it from that perspective becomes very important, because you're actually going to get really different implications and really different findings from different populations. So I think that was a nice intersection of both diversity of specialization and diversity of patient population kind of coming together to help us really understand better what are the driving factors of different diseases. So I'm just thinking one specific example is lupus, where you're getting physical manifestations along with cognitive impairment from very early on often. Yeah, I would say that. And then, of course, bringing in AI or people who do more cognitive science and psychometric analysis of these patients has really added additional layers to these very complex diseases that evolve over time.
Great. So you're talking about the multidisciplinary nature, I guess, as well, of your research, as well as the population, right? Which is important, especially if you're learning from that data.
Exactly.
Great. And how about Saeed? Why is it
Yeah.
important to have a diverse team that develops AI solutions for healthcare and mental health applications?
Yeah, I think one of the things that that you get out of a diverse team is this variance of opinions due to lived experience. And I think we can try to understand somebody else's experience and try to kind of mentalize what problems they might think are important, or what mental health issues are prevalent in their community. But ultimately, only they can really understand and deeply understand and represent how these problems disproportionately affect the people with a common background. And so I think you really need to unite all of those perspectives together to really get a holistic idea of how a problem occurs, what the driving factors are, those problems are. You're always going to miss something if you're on the outside, but if this is your life, then you're going to be able to represent it most accurately.
Yeah, definitely. Having all the opinions at the table, basically. Right. And how about Irene? If you want to add something. I think you're muted again, so sorry.
Sorry about that. I think Sally and Laurent covered it in a much more expert way than me, because they also have the medical background. But no doubt, it's a very important matter, and that's why we're all here today to discuss it and see what we can all do about it jointly.
Great. And Navishya, if you would like to add a little something.
I think Saeed covered it beautifully in terms of just having a more diverse multitude of input and better understanding of the issues that are being faced by different communities.
Great. So then I guess as a follow-up question, I can maybe ask Irene. So advancing diversity in the AI teams would help to ensure that we're building technology that addresses mental health and health solutions for everyone. So having all the opinions at the table allows us to really consider the needs and the pain points of particular populations and society. So what can we do as a community or even within our own teams to ensure that we are appropriately building talent and actively working to implement tools that reflect our society?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There are multiple ways to go about it, obviously, ways that can address the problem in short-term phase or longer-term. For short-term recruitment practices, to begin with, we should have processes in place to ensure that there is fair representation of all social groups in talent pipelines, but also like in the candidates that we hire. So a way to do that is to make sure that we have representation from all social groups in our recruitment committees, interviewing committees, and in this way to ensure that the hiring decisions that we end up with actually reflect the society that we live in and represent all these groups. For longer term, short term is always good and we see some immediate results. But it doesn't actually tackle the problem from its root. For longer term solutions would have to do more with education and training. So when we train the next generation of AI experts, we should make sure to study ethical artificial intelligence and put these learnings into practice. So more specifically, it would make a big difference to support training opportunities on the social implications of AI, including equity matters, diversity, inclusion, and practice all these learnings and encourage everyone around us to practice them as well. And in order for this training to have even more impact, it would make sense to have it through both the organized academic educational settings across disciplines, but also in less formal settings, more like extracurricular activities like workshops, meetups, talks, and so on. In this way, we would probably cover the problem in a more round way, short term, longer term, addressing the root of the cause as well.
I really like how you thought about having as part of the recruitment a panel, if you will, to have lots of representation, because I guess even like the job ad can be either inclusive or exclusive, right? So you probably want to think about that from the beginning instead of saying, okay, we have a bunch of candidates now let's try and implement diversity, right? Which doesn't really work.
Absolutely.
Anybody else like to comment on this?
Yeah, I'd love to kind of follow up with that. I think, like you say, recruiting, everything from the job ad to like the description and the requirements, is important for promoting diversity. But I think it's important for us to keep in mind that recruiting and hiring is just the first step, and this is a marathon. You can't just bring in a diverse team and then kind of leave them to fend for themselves, or put them into a structure that optimizes for kind of non-inclusive parameters. So you can't put them into a promotion process that asks, for example, women to talk about the amazing transformative project they did when actually they're doing, 30 projects that have all been kind of asked of them, and they're not allowed to say no to anything, and they're stretched thin. But that kind of, diverse contribution should be rewarded the same as kind of the one transformative thing. I think what we see a lot is that, companies will hire diverse teams and say like, yay, we hired this diverse team. And it's like, okay, well, now what are you going to do with that diverse team? Like, how are you going to support them? How are you going to mentor them? How are you going to like grow their careers? How are they going to be promoted? And then when they do get promoted, how are you going to make sure that they in turn back and mentor other people that you're hiring?
Pay it forward. Very good point. Yeah, that's a great discussion so far. Okay, so anybody else want to add anything?
I just wanted to jump in and add on these two really fantastic points that were just made about kind of perhaps lowering the risk of people who want to join this field, because I think that sometimes someone who maybe has kids or women who are looking for a more stable kind of career or trajectory to follow, we ask people to take huge risks in this field in terms of what they research and where they go, and giving them a stable opportunity, giving them the kind of the clear path. So like as Say was saying, talking about not just like the recruitment, but how are you going to mentor them? How are you going to create a path forward for them? Making that clear and making sure that it remains a very good opportunity for them long term, I think also can help retain talent. We've seen in a lot of research where a lot of women will join, for example, like just speaking of women, for example, as a population that's underrepresented in some of these research areas, will have a huge or maybe parity early on. And then we see a huge kind of leakage in the system along the way. And so finding those leaks and essentially plugging them, I think can be really valuable for creating and maintaining these diverse teams longer term.
Yeah, these are all really great points. I attended last year a really great diversity panel by St. Mike's Hospital and iBest. And one of the panelists, she said something that was very interesting. So she had to overcome a bunch of barriers to get into this particular research lab. And I guess she came from not a lot of money. And it was very difficult for her to get there. And every Friday, her supervisor would come and say, "I'm going to the cottage," and talk about the cottage quite a bit. And she said she felt like she never had anything in common with him because she didn't understand the cottage life. She didn't know what it was like to do this and that. So I think also creating inclusive discussions and being mindful of everyone's background. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to ask a question, and anybody can take a stab at it if they wish. So, diversity is an issue across all industries. It's not just AI, right? So, but why do you think that it is a particularly acute problem in the field of AI, or more specifically in health and mental health AI applications? So, you can leave it as broad as AI, or you can get more specific into the disciplines of AI. Anybody?
I'll just start it off quickly here. I don't want to take up too much time, but I think what I've seen a lot is, at least in the area of computer science, a lot of gatekeeping around what actually counts as computer science research. And so I think because AI for mental health is such an intersectional and interdisciplinary kind of research area, it's hard to feel that you fit in any given area. And so even people who come to interview as faculty candidates will get the question of like, is this even computer science? Like, does this, like, why are you even interviewing with this department? Like, why don't you go interview with this other department? And so I think it can be a really frosty reception. And I think that anybody who's trying to join up is not looking to overcome that necessarily, or a short list of people want to kind of enter the field or be a part of a group that is kind of that opposed, I guess, to it, or that resistant to that kind of diversity in the field.
Yes, like I guess you're saying as being in a multidisciplinary field, you kind of have to know everything in this field, right? Where the computer science is a tool to achieve something. But at the same time, right, the application of the tools is also very important, because these are how we're going to bring these things to society.
I think just to echo that. Oh, sorry, Irene, go for it.
No, please go ahead. Say, oh, Irene was going to go.
Okay, sorry. For that, I think what you see at a lot of machine learning conferences, you know, like ICML, like you'll see this apotheosis of the theoretical result, like some new parameter that will bring whatever, like increase your performance on FP15K. And it's like, okay, great. But like, I think, you know, people disregard really good applications of machine learning. I shouldn't say the disregard, but there is like a power structure there. And I think that's also really frustrating because it is exclusionary to people who are actually interested in applying these things to actual problems. And I think it also kind of disregards how hard it is to do something real with machine learning. And so, yeah, I totally echo what Lauren was saying about like gatekeeping and kind of like putting machine learning in this little box and saying like, you don't have this, if you don't have a lemma in your paper, then you're not a machine learner. It's like, okay, sure.
Do you feel that that's more so to women, that feeling?
I mean,
or underrepresented groups?
From my personal experience, I think my interest has always been in doing something real with machine learning and trying to like help someone. I think, and I just wrote a paper last year where we spent weeks trying to improve performance on FP15K and WordNet. And I was like, this is just not interesting to me at all anymore. Like, why are we not past this as a field? I think that's also interesting that like, we have these 5 benchmarks, right? That like everyone's trying to improve performance on. And, you know, why don't we have diverse benchmarks that represent real problems that we're trying to solve? Like, it's really so intrinsic in what we do, this kind of like, you know, this little box of what we consider machine learning. And I find that really frustrating.
Irene, if you wanted to take a stab at it.
Yeah, sure. That was really interesting to hear. And I was always puzzled in the past about the gap between fundamental research and applied research, actual implementation of solutions, which is what makes a difference in everyday lives and society. Thank you for saying that comment. It was really, really insightful. April, I wanted to add on what you said in the beginning, that why diversity is so acute in AI, and you mentioned it's not just an AI thing. Absolutely, like and the problem why it's so acute with AI is because AI is everywhere these days. It's permeating health. That's why we're here. Mental health, education, transportation, energy, agriculture. You name it. It's everywhere around us, and it's such a pervasive technology. And that's why, if it has a diversity issue in it, that's why the issue, the problem is so acute, because of the pervasiveness of the technology. And it's not only in different types of industries or sectors, it's also everywhere in our own lives, both the professional and the personal ones. How many of us use AI in our everyday personal lives, our smartphones, so many other smart devices? So because of this technology being everywhere around us, if there is a problem in it, it's perpetuating itself if we don't do something now. And as we heard before in the presentations, so many times biases creep into the data unconsciously. Nobody wants that. I think nobody wants that, but biases in the data only mean that we create models with biases. So again, perpetuating the problem. So so that's why it's very critical to ensure that we create machine learning solutions that are fair and unbiased. And that's why it's so critical to apply ethical AI in our everyday, like both professional and personal lives, in how we use this technology.
Well, I 100% agree with that. Like the platform that Anna presented on initially, how it kind of audits your how ethical your AI solution is. So I wonder if like one of the things that is done is actually just quickly looking at the gender split, right? You probably have to upload your gender characteristics, and so probably little quick checks like this, if we're able to identify them first, would probably, because that's the first step. We have to understand that these biases are here before we start to try and fix it. Okay, so I have another question, and this I think is for Irene and Sae. So what do you do in your role or organization to advance and support diversity in AI?
I can start if that's okay, Irene. So at Benevolent, I started the gender network with a few colleagues of mine. We meet kind of every month or so. It's primarily kind of the female identifying people at the company, and then we have a couple of meetups that are open to allies, and kind of create this like kind of like warm, fuzzy, open environment. People can just talk about anything that they're interested in. You know, we've talked a lot about the promotion process, or we've talked about mentorship, or kind of anything that's on our minds. And it's been really helpful to kind of just get a beat on what is important to people in this organization, in this case, women at the organization, to help advance their careers. And I think, you know, for me, I've really benefited from a lot of mentorship from, you know, these transformative women that I look up to so much. And I really try to pay it forward and mentor, you know, as many people as I can. And it doesn't need to be this big thing. Just check in with someone and say like, hey, you want to grab a coffee? Let's just chat and see what kind of comes out of it. And I think, you know, maybe as you can tell, like I bring my like 100% authentic self to work every day. And like, you know, and I think it helps to kind of, hopefully helps to create an environment where people can feel like they can also bring themselves in and kind of express their diverse views, and that it's kind of a safe environment for them.
That sounds wonderful. Irene.
Yes. So as we were saying before, diversity comes in many forms. It doesn't pertain only to one demographic group. It has many manifestations, many dimensions. So the more of them we can address, the better. So at Borealis AI, we have a collaborative approach where we partner with academic institutions, educational organizations, other industry partners that also support diversity causes, and see how we can do as a group. So for example, we recently partnered with the AI for Good Lab, which is an AI training program for women, for female identified students. Similarly, we partnered with more global organizations like the Women in Machine Learning organization. Recently, last December, we partnered with the organization to support their workshop co-located at Virtual NeurIPS. It's a great organization because they support women from their personal to their professional journey. They try to connect them with each other, as I said before, share their experiences, but open up networking and professional opportunities. Now, as an organization, we also have our own internal programs that address diversity. More specifically, we have a new mentorship program to follow up on what Saeed said with that really nice personal example. Mentorship program for undergraduate students from diverse backgrounds in order to get help and some training to solve problems from their own communities. So basically, students come to us with their own ideas, and we provide them with training, mentorship, industry exposure, and guidance. With that program, we intend to tackle students from early on, as early as we can in their undergrad years, from diverse locations, not only just the main cities, but remote areas where opportunities might be less to get into the AI field. Students across underrepresented groups, women, BIPOC minorities, and other groups, and even other groups that are next to us and sometimes who don't consider that they have hardships. New immigrants, for instance, who might live in a big center but might have a language barrier. So they come to us. We don't solve their problem for them. We give them the tools and the training so that they can solve it themselves. So in this way, we are trying to help diversity among early talent, early students, but also skills development. So that program is more like a fast-track accelerator of ideas, skills, and capabilities. And what I particularly like about it is that it also tackles social good. So it empowers students to actually work on their own solutions to benefit their own society and drive positive change. It's a new program. We've only run it for a year now, but we're excited because we just partnered with CIFAR, and as of a few months ago, it became part of the national AI training programs under CIFAR. So collaboratively and individually is, I think, how we can all tackle the problem.
Yes, those all sound like great programs, and mentorship is definitely one of the things that underrepresented groups don't necessarily have. And even just from my own personal experience, I'm an electrical engineer, and there is no women in my field. And so I thought when I was going to become an academic and have children, it's going to be no problem. Everything is fine because nobody's ever talked to me about it. And then I had 3 children. And so I found out that that was not the case. So I'm actually very open with my female grad students, undergrads. Like, I'm going to pick up the kids, they're not feeling well, or I'm tired today because the kids didn't let me sleep. So I try to be honest. I also say the good things, but also just the reality, because I think that was one of the hardest things, was the reality check. So, Ma, I see that you're in here. Is it okay if I ask one more question of Navicia? If
Please
she
go
can
ahead.
answer
Please go ahead.
quickly. Okay.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
So Navicia, what challenges do you believe the mental health or the medical community faces in using AI? So actually implementing it for routine work and sign-outs, including for health applications and mental illnesses.
Right. So I would say a big challenge is definitely the attitude towards it. So we know that scientists tend to be quite conservative in terms of some of the conclusions that they're making about their research. Sometimes they can be a bit hesitant to come to conclusions, but it's even more so in the health and mental health fields, I think, especially when patients' health and well-being is at stake. There is a need to be very conservative there. And so when they're using techniques and methods like AI that they don't fully understand what's going on, it's kind of like a black box. And so I think a lot of researchers and clinicians would be even more hesitant to make conclusions based off of that sort of research. So I think that that's a major challenge for sure. And then another thing as well is that a lot of clinical research tends to have just smaller data sets as well. And so longitudinal data sets and consortium studies and everything, those do happen, but they're a lot farther and few between. So it is harder to get a hold of that type of data as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's always the one of the challenges of doing anything medical, right? Getting labeled data. And labeled data that's good. That doesn't introduce some bias into your model just from the label, right? But so that I think that probably concludes the panel. Thank you, Ma, and all the panel attendees and the panelists. It was great to be with such a great, strong team of women in this field. And I hope that maybe one day our paths cross in person, if that starts to be a thing again.
Yeah, I would like to say thank you to all of you. I really enjoyed the panel discussion, and in the procedure that I invited you, actually, it was great pleasure for me to just contact you, sending several emails. I'm sorry for that, just disturbing you, but thank you so much. And also Lauren that just joined us today very quickly. Thank you, Lauren. And yeah. And we have just 15 minutes for a break, and then we have 2 short talks for 2 PhD students. And just stay with us. We get back after 15 minutes.
Thank you.
And thank
Nice
you.
to see you, everyone. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care. Cheers.